In the wake of coronavirus and the toll it's taken on the Australian economy, we're being told to holiday here this year. It's a cute sentiment, but it's one that Australians are actually embracing all on their own. Vehicles like these are in hot demand because they are the every car. They can cater to 7 people, ferry you to work and back in comfort, head off the beaten track, tow a boat, and still make it back in time for the school run. That breadth of ability is extremely valuable to a lot of people, with some models' wait times stretching upwards of a year. The new generation Isuzu MU-X adds a raft of updates to a proven package, but its rival in the Ford Everest is still one of the best sellers in its segment despite its age. Which of the two offers a better large off-road SUV package? We've snagged 2 high-spec offerings to find out. Assembled before us is a 2022 Isuzu MU-X LST and the Ford Everest Sport, both in 4x4 configurations with automatic transmissions. They're priced within a few $1,000s of one another, so it should make for some tight competition. We'll take a brief overview of what each model entails in terms of engines and specifications before heading out for a drive both on and off-road to see which model covers all bases better. In the Ford's case, the Everest Sport sits near the top of the range with a list price of around $65,000. Though with the next generation Everest around the corner, price might be a little more fluid. The Isuzu MU-X we have here is a top-of-the-line LST variant, which costs over $67,000. In terms of the former, the Ford Everest Sport is an addition that includes many stylistic touches, but also gets a smattering of equipment to keep the aging platform in line with its competition. Standard kit includes 20-inch black alloy wheels, sport lettering on the side and rear of the car, soft touch dashboard with blue contrast stitching, and black accenting on areas like the roof rails, side mirrors, bumpers and grille. Doing service inside this Everest Sport is Ford's 2-litre twin-turbo 4-cylinder diesel engine, which outputs 157 kilowatts and 500 newton meters to all 4 wheels. It's paired to a 10-speed automatic transmission, and the car is rated to tow a braked 3,100 kilograms. It uses an 8-inch touchscreen inside the leather-clad cabin, and the central speedo is flanked by a pair of configurable screens. It's cool tech that made the Everest a name for itself on debut, but is starting to feel a little old hat against newer competition such as the Isuzu MU-X. The new gen MU-X has gained ground in myriad areas, but one of the most noticeable areas is the interior. This flagship LST variant scores a 9-inch infotainment screen, leather accent seats like the Everest, power adjustable and heated front seats, remote engine start, and 20-inch alloy wheels. Under the bonnet is a 3-litre turbo diesel 4-cylinder engine which sends 140 kilowatts and 450 newton meters to a part-time 4x4 system, and this power plant is mated to a 6-speed automatic transmission. The MU-X has the highest tow rating in the category of 3,500 kilograms. We'll come back to the specs and interiors in due course, but for now, let's get behind the wheel. We'll start our drive doing something aspirational like off-roading, which most buyers of cars like these will be super into. In the Everest Sport that we're starting off in, power comes courtesy of a 2-litre turbo diesel 4-cylinder engine lifted from the Ranger Raptor. Power outputs are 157 kilowatts and 500 newton meters of torque. It comes mated solely to a 10-speed automatic transmission jointly developed between Ford and GM. Shifts from the 10-speed auto are super smooth and near imperceptible, and I quite like the way it's able to pick up a ratio out of nowhere, giving you power wherever you need it. I'm no seasoned off-roader, but we are tackling a bit of straggly terrain today, and the Everest is taking it all in its stride. There's a terrain management system down here in the center console, which is a switchable system that primes the car for different terrain modes. At the moment, we've got it in mud and rocks, and it seems to be priming the car just so we're not having any real trouble getting up and down this steep hill here. So the Everest does have a full-time 4-wheel drive system, so you don't have to worry about putting it into 4x4 when you get to the rougher terrain. It does have 4x4 low, so when you get to a particularly rough section, you can switch that on and it makes life that much easier. The Everest has always fared quite well in terms of ground clearance. We haven't gone over any particularly difficult mountains today, but the short, stout overhangs make life that much easier. Throttle response is nice and smooth, which makes setting off from a stop very simple and nice and easy. Now we know the Ford Everest is a proven character when it comes to on and off-road performance, but there is a second car here. Let's go take a look at the Isuzu MU-X. We're now in the Isuzu MU-X, which uses a slightly larger in-displacement engine. It's a 3-litre 4-cylinder turbo diesel engine which outputs 140 kilowatts and 450 newton meters to a part-time 4-wheel drive system. It uses a 6-speed automatic transmission where the Ford uses a 10-speed, and it's noticeable where it just can't quite pick up the same amount of torque from anywhere in the rev range like the Ford can. As well, the ride control is noticeably more jittery compared to the Ford, with more imperfections translating through to the cabin. Like the Ford, the MU-X contains a good amount of ground clearance, and on the trails that we're on today, you're not really going to have too much trouble getting over mounds and that sort of thing. It'll take some pretty rough terrain in order to get in trouble. We are on highway tyres today, but nothing that we've thrown at it has really been too much. Traction is good. That said, if you do get in trouble, the reverse camera here is really high definition, so it makes reversing down a track pretty simple. Well, that's enough off-road for now. Let's see how these two go on the road, where they'll spend most of their time. The Everest manages to maintain its big-bodied weight quite well between rolling bends and stays pretty sure-footed on the road. It is definitely one of the better large SUVs when off-road, but even can handle the around-town schlep without too much frustration. That said, it is a long 4.9 metre body, and that does present problems when you're trying to park it in city. The Everest does a good job to iron over uneven surfaces and shields the people inside from too much upset. It absorbs bumps pretty well and only really gets upset when going over sustained corrugations. Steering-wise, it is a nice lightweight, which comes in handy particularly when you're about town manoeuvring the car. As mentioned before about the 10-speed gearbox, I'm a particular fan of the way it just picks up a gear out of anywhere, which makes overtaking super easy. Some people complain about the gearbox's tendency to hunt for gears around town, though I've not really experienced it much myself. I've set myself up a really nice driving position, which affords a great view over the road and actually out the back as well. It's got a really nice glass house. Now, obviously this Ford Everest here is based on the same platform as its Ford Ranger brother. I've levelled a few complaints at the Ranger in the past because of its lack of composure, however this car is much more refined. Well, here we are in the Isuzu MU-X on the open road where most buyers will spend their time. From a touring perspective, it is pretty comfortable in here in terms of ride profile, just getting a little bit upset by more persistent corrugations. Compared to the Everest, the MU-X's steering feel is a bit heavier, but that's not such a bad thing when you're touring around like this. However, when you're in town, it does feel that little bit more laboursome and heavy. In terms of driving position, I'm sat pretty nice and high and have a good view out of the road. Out the back of the car, it is a little bit more letterbox and you're not seeing quite as much as you are in the Everest. Engine and gearbox response is pretty good. Once you get on the power, it does hook up, and for those overtakes, they are dispatched pretty easily. However, it is, like I said, a bit louder than the Ford Everest. The Isuzu MU-X does have a camera-based cruise control system with steering assist, though I have found that sometimes the steering does take over a bit more than I would like it to. Let's pull over and have more of an in-depth look at what both of these cars are like on the inside. Inside, the new updated Isuzu MU-X presents much nicer than its predecessor, and there's a new 9-inch infotainment system sitting pride of place on the dash. With that said, the infotainment system does present a bit basic for something costing more than 60 grand. Luckily, it does have wireless Apple CarPlay, so you can use that system if you like. There's a good amount of space to get comfy with for longer drives, and I'm a fan of these seats even though they are a bit more regimented than the Ford Everest's. Aiding that good roomy feeling is a tilt and reach adjustable steering wheel, which the Ford Everest doesn't get. But that said, these sidewalls here are pretty hard, so it's hard on your knees when you're going on longer drives. Storage wise, there's a cubby in front of the shifter here for all your odds and ends, and there are big door pockets for large water bottles. As mentioned earlier, the Ford Everest has done a good job at keeping pace with the segment. Its interior still looks largely contemporary, and even things like the screen size stack up against newer rivals. It might not be as large as the MU-X's, but it does have nicer graphics, and there even feels like there's more content to it. It will be nice to see the next generation Ford Everest get a completely new interior, but for the time being, I'm still pretty happy in this one. These seats are very plush compared to the Isuzu's, and you can see yourself sinking into them for hours on end on a long journey. There is good storage about the cabin for all your odds and ends, and I particularly like the intuitive button layout. In the back seat, there's a good amount of head, leg, and foot room, and there are airflow controls down here. They do come out of the roof. Plus, to power your journey, there is a full AC power port here, plus a 12-volt port. In the second row, like the Ford, there is a good amount of head, leg, and foot room. However, I will say that it's marginally smaller than the Ford Everest. Plus, these seats don't slide forward and back like the Everest do. The power-operated boot gives access to an 876-litre space in 5-seat mode and a 1,796-litre space in 2-seat mode. Plus, these back seats go down electrically. Pretty cool. In the boot there is an 1119 litre space in 5-seat mode, and in 2-seat mode it expands to 2,138 litres, definitely bigger than the Ford Everest. As we've found, both of these wagons are super capable, but there can only be one winner. Off-road SUVs have become the default family car, and it's not hard to see why. The level of ability these two pack into their big bodies is frankly astonishing, and for the price you pay, there is a fantastic amount of ingrained value. We've now spent a bunch of time in the Ford Everest and Isuzu MU-X over a variety of domains. As we've found, both of these SUVs have proved very capable both on and off-road, and they stack a huge amount of equipment and comfort to keep you happy for years to come. However, it's a Ford Everest, which recently won our large off-road SUV category at Drive Car of the Year, which is a clear victor. Ford's level of continual development has seen it suit the Australian conditions better than the Isuzu MU-X, and its level of refinement is appreciated in a car that will spend most of its time on the road. With that said, whether at-home adventurers choose the Ford Everest or Isuzu MU-X, both will enjoy their purchase for years to come.